please give a fantastic Ignite warm welcome to Matt Davies.
Thank you, Katie. Hello, Ignite 26. How are we doing? Are we having a good event so far? I certainly am. Thank you for turning up for my session. I was a bit nervous, given the session after lunch, that people might be snoozing and stuff. So hopefully you're not snoozing. Hopefully I'll keep you awake as we go through. We've got a lot to talk about. We were going to talk about brand positioning. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about how it's important for you to stand out in your sector, in your category. So let's see how we go. First of all, let's get some definitions straight. First off, I want to ask you, what is that? Okay, but what does it mean?
Just do it.
So someone said just do it. Somebody over there, I'm sure, said pain. Somebody over there said running. Someone said Nike, or Nike, depending on how you pronounce it. Now, obviously, that's a logo or a symbol, isn't it? But that symbol points to something bigger, okay? We always have meaning attached to us whenever we come across a product or a service, or as Elsie was talking about earlier, yourself. People attach meaning to you. So for me, that's the first thing I want to start with. What is a brand? Most people I talk to, they say it's a logo and some fonts and maybe some colors, right? Which is part of it, right? But it's not a brand. A brand is the meaning that people attach to you and your offering. That's my best definition I can get to you. The closest in English we might have would be your reputation if you're talking about an individual. So that's the best we can do with the definition, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And what I'm in is then, I guess, the kind of the crazy profession of branding, which is the management of that meaning. And here's the thing, folks, like if you're in business, I would suggest you also are in branding, because you're trying to ensure that the right people attach the right meaning to you, and ultimately, if they're in your ideal customer set, they're putting their hand in their pocket, they're pulling out some money, and they're paying you for what you're offering, because they see value in what you're doing. So brand for me isn't just a logo and some fonts. It should really run through all parts of your business, through your culture, your product and your services, what you're actually bringing to market, through to how people experience doing business with you, running through your customer experience. And then, yes, the logo and the fonts, the nice veneer right at the end, the lick of paint comes on at the end. But what we tend to do is we tend to focus on this end bit because we can see it and touch it and feel it. But as we've been learning today through the previous speakers, we've actually got to start way before that. Branding is a strategic endeavor. Branding is the management of meaning. So this is a lovely quote from my mentor, Marty Neumeyer. It's not what we say it is, it's what they say it is. That's what your brand is. And you've done your branding correct when the decisions that you make with your leadership team in a boardroom tucked away somewhere are then outworked, so that you might be walking around an event like we have here today in Ignite 26 in Newark, and you might hear someone say, oh, that's that chap from that brand, and they do X, Y, and Z. That's when you know when they've said it about you, not that you've just said it, okay? But what you can do is you can manage the signals that you send off. You can manage the way that you communicate, and better than that, you can actually manage the reality of the value you're offering. So branding is a strategic endeavor. Now, I tend to work with leadership teams all over the world, actually, in all sorts of different companies and categories. And I tend to always ask 4 very simple, basic questions, which seem super easy on the surface, but you will be surprised how hard it is to answer some of these questions, particularly if you run a sort of a mid to large business. Now, if you don't run a mid to large business, it's still relevant to you, because if you set the foundation today, when you become a mid to large business, you'll find it a lot easier, and you won't have to hire someone like me to come in and pick up the pieces, because what tends to happen is meaning fragments over time. When you start your business, you've got great ideas in your mind, you can easily communicate it to your team, everyone buys into that, great. Give it 10 years, give it 20 years, give it 50 years, and you'll find that meaning dissipates. So, let's go through these quick questions. First question, why do we exist beyond making money? Like, obviously, we're in business, right? We're here to make money. I'm not advocating sort of doing it for free, don't get me wrong, although charities, hats off to you, but I am a commercial guy, right? So we do it to make money. But why do we do it beyond that? Okay, the money should be the outcome of the value we produce. the value we bring to the market, the outcome is that people will pay for it. So what is it that we're bringing to market? Why does that matter? And, frankly, yes, you want to get rich, but nobody, apart from you, probably will care about that. So we have to have a compelling reason for people to get on board with what you're doing. Talent that you want to hire in the market. Why are they joining you? Customers also become more loyal when they appreciate the mission that you're on, what you're trying to achieve, partners, supply chain, all of that good stuff. So that's the first question. Why do we exist? The other one we've already touched on in some of the other talks. So important to know who it is that you exist to serve. Because if branding is the management of meaning, you've got to manage the right meaning for the right people. Who are those people? What impact are we going to make on them? Where do they hang out? What do they do? What value is it? What problem are we solving? How do we make them become bigger and better and more than they are today? Big questions. The next one is how we should show up. I know we've got a few branding and design agencies in the room, experts in helping us communicate, show up in the right way. And then the final one, what is our offering? And that seems quite simple. It's like, our offering's this. But I'm going to show you something in a minute, because I don't think it's just good enough anymore to just show up with a standard offering. Like somebody could get that same thing from 50 other places. The big challenge is, what is your unique offering? What can I buy from you that I cannot buy anywhere else? Do you know that answer in your businesses today? Big question. So we're going to talk about it in a minute. But what I find, we've heard from Tony earlier about the mind trap and how consumers and how we ourselves kind of can trap ourselves in our minds. And when you were talking, I was thinking, that's quite handy, because I'm going to talk about the brand trap, right? So it's a similar thing. Like we can find in business where we fall into this trap, and I see it tons. I get wheeled into all sorts of businesses, as I say. And one of the things that a consultant like me would probably do is we would look at your marketplace, okay? We'd look at the type of business you are, your location, your type of audience that you want to work with, and I'd do a little market competitor analysis, right? We love it. We love it in the consultancy world. And what I find more often than not is that when I do that, it's so weird because everybody looks the same. They're all blue and white, and they all have pictures of men in grey suits shaking hands on their homepage. It's so peculiar. And then they all offer a very similar customer service from what I can gather. Sometimes I go and I call some of the competitors and I find out. And they all talk the same. They sound the same. Their offices look the same. Everything is exactly the same. Now, that's okay. You'd say, Matt, that's what we'd expect from the legal profession. Of course, that's how we operate. Or the building trade, or whatever it is, plumbers. But I would say to you, you have fallen into the brand trap. What is the brand trap? The abandonment of something we call distinctiveness by imitation of competitors. And what we tend to do is we look at who's number one in our category, we look up to them and go, ooh, let's copy everything they're doing, because it must work for them, so it's going to work for us. And we think that that's the safe and obvious choice. But the reality is that is the most dangerous and ridiculous thing you can do, because they own that and you're trying to penetrate into something they're dominating. And what your job is to do is to actually think, no, how could I create different types of value, a different value, and bring that to market in a different way so that people see more value, different type of person sees more value in me, and then you can grow your business. So let me show you this in action. Oh, by the way, I love little emojis, so I put that on there. So if you're in a brand trap, oh my gosh, goodness, gracious me, move on. So the problem we have, you see, folks, is that we live in an era. By the way, thank you for the laugh. I appreciated that. Whoever was that, you, Hattie? Thank you. Appreciate that. Keep that coming, because that keeps me feedback. It's good. The problem is, folks, we live in a world where consumers have less time and more choice. That is the case even if you're in the B2B space as well as the B2C space. We live in a global economy now. We have the internet. And so with this problem, it's a problem, right? Because it's really hard to get our messages to land sometimes. Let me show you a little example. I just thought this was a fascinating example. So I don't know if anyone's come across this. This is just a sort of an illustrative purposes. This is Scott Brinker's work for, I think it's Martech magazine, or Martech, the website. Anyway, he assesses every year all the different marketing technology platforms that you could buy. And he started it in 2011. So in 2011, did this little map of all these things that you could buy. So for example, there's a whole section there on social media. I don't know if you can see it. If you can't, don't worry. But like, there's a whole bunch of icons. These will help you manage your social media and so on, right? These different categories within MarTech, marketing tech. So that was 2011, 150 brands. He did it last year. He's about to release the next one. He did it last year. He's done it every single year. How many brands in the MarTech space do you think he managed to map last year? Answer. Nearly 15,000. Okay, so much so you can't even, I'm quite close, right? But you can't see what they are now. So I had to even zoom in, and even when I'm zoomed in, you can hardly see. So the point here is there's more choice, less time. Okay, imagine I'm a marketing manager, right? And we decide in my company, right, we're going to do some email marketing this year, and I need a platform to manage my emails that we're going to send out. Now, I'm not going to have time, or the will, to be completely honest, to analyze all of the potential offerings in that category. So how am I going to make my decision? So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll probably look around. I'll find out, well, what's the most familiar? Okay, have I used something in the past? I might ask my team, guys, girls, have you used anything that you recommend? And, I'd probably then get a little short list. And even then I might be like, oh, sugar, I haven't got like 3 weeks to analyze every single one, test it all out, whatever. So I'll probably go with the one that maybe, my gut feels is the right one. And I'll just make a call and go, guys, I just think we should go for this one, right? I haven't got the will to live. Let's just go in for this one. And that's genuinely how it works. So very hard to penetrate new markets. Now, the point here is that I will probably go for the one that seems to be add the most value to me, whatever it is I want to do, and probably be the most exciting one. If they're all looking the same and then there's this one that looks a little bit different or feels a bit different, that will get my attention. So if I was to say to you here, which dot stands out most to you, you're probably like, what are you on about, Matt? But if I said, okay, which dot stands out the most to you now, you'd be like, the one with the star. So if you're trying to enter a new category or launch into a category, the principle of this is, look, you've got to stand out. You've got to create value for the right people at the right time, with the right meaning. Because this is how the human mind works, okay? We have almost like these boxes in our minds. And what tends to happen, the psychologists tell us, is that we go around trying to seek solutions to problems. And if we don't have that problem there and then, that's okay. We're still we tuck things away, don't we, for later. We're like, I wonder if, one day I'll need some sort of crazy bearded brand consultant to come talk to my team, about alignment and brand strategy. Maybe not today, but you might tuck my brand, my name, in the back of your head. 4 years' time, you might give me a call. I'll say, oh, great. That's how it works. So we tuck ideas and solutions behind in our brain, things that stand out, things that are different, things that are unusual. We filter out the useless, and we hold on to things that we think in the future or at that time will solve a problem or a challenge or an issue. And then we put them in our box, in our mind. And we might have a selection in there, but we usually have a primary brand, if you like, that we think that will solve that problem. So if I said to you, it's a hot sunny day, we're absolutely boiling, and we really fancy a sugary, fizzy drink. Who is thinking of Coca-Cola right now? Right? Because in your brain, that's the brand that has got in there and says, I solve that problem, I meet that need. And so the point is that's not even today. But when that happens, there you go. Now, obviously there's a few other things there. Is it available? Can I afford it? Et cetera, et cetera. But nonetheless, you've thought of that brand. Now, it's the same principle when it comes to whatever business you're in. You want to be top of mind, ready for someone when we call it, they enter the category to buy, that they're going to buy, and they're going to think of you, and they're going to buy you. That's what you want. It's called this idea of top of mind. Now, there's a lot of research been done. I don't want to bore you in stats, but this was quite interesting from Harvard Business Review. 90% of buyers choose a brand they already have in mind at the beginning of the sales process. That was a B2B study. So your mission is not just to sell to the people who are ready to buy today, but to think about, well, where's my wider audience and how can I be in their minds so that when they enter the category to buy, they think of my brand. That is a big challenge. So that's long-term marketing. That's long-term brand building, rather than short-term, features, function, benefits for today. Now, that's the challenge. Now, we call this the 95-5 rule. And again, there's tons and tons of research that's recently been done. The Ehrenberg Bass Institute in Australia are leading the way in studies in this. And it changes from category to category. But overall, what they have found, to put it simply, is that in any given category, only 95% of the potential target market are ready to buy today. 5% might be ready to buy today. And guess what we all do as business owners and marketeers? We go, oh, we're going to target the 5%. But that's where the battleground is. That's the tough bit, right? Because what the studies are saying is that actually that is great if you're short term, but we need to start thinking long term. They found that businesses that put 60% of their marketing spend into the 95% actually won longer term. And most of us, particularly small businesses, we only target the 5%. So this is me championing long-term thinking, long-term brand building, long-term communications, not just for people in market today, but also for customers or potential customers that are in the market long-term. Now, let me keep going. Is this going all right, by the way? I'm going, yeah, everybody, I'm getting thumbs up. This is good, this is good. So, what I wanted to talk a little bit more about now was that the brand trap really is how we start copying people who are like number one in the category. And as I say, we kind of think, oh, that's safe. But really it isn't safe because it doesn't stand out then from the person that's already owning that number one slot. So our job actually, particularly if we're starting a new business, is to disrupt the industry somehow, to give them something to think and talk about, to jolt them to thinking, hang on, this box in my head that has this brand in, maybe I need to think about this new brand. And so this is what, this is me just playing a little bit of fun, but it's like, oh, if it worked for number one in the category, it's going to work for us. No, it won't, because they've done that. So let's start thinking differently. And this is what tends to happen as categories grow. All these brands launch in, and they start saying, well, no, we're the best at this. No, we're the best. No, we're the best. And then someone has this great idea, which is the craziest idea, and they go, we're the best and we're the cheapest. Oh my goodness, because then what happens is all the other brands start dropping their prices, and it becomes an absolute nightmare, race to the bottom, because nobody's thinking the right way. You need to think about value. Some of the strategies I've launched with my clients are what I call the penthouse strategy, which is to completely flip that, which is to say, okay, instead of racing to the bottom, how could we create the maximum value in our category? How could we charge the most for this? How would that look? It's a completely different mindset shift and some amazing results out of it. But if you don't start thinking differently, what you find is your category where basically everybody's layered on top of each other. And if I suddenly enter the category in order to buy as a consumer, I'm just like, oh my days, they all look exactly the same. Can't make my mind up, so I'll just go with whatever I had in my mind anyway. And that's how it works. So we've got to kind of break out of the brand trap. The brand trap is, I would suggest to you, broken when you have a very clear brand strategy. I'm going to talk to you about what that is in a minute. If you don't lead with that, if you don't have that clearly defined, clearly understood, particularly by your leadership team, you're going to get into these muddles. And so my also kind of comment to you on this is that this is not just a marketing problem. I talk a lot to leadership teams. This is a leadership challenge. You've got to align your team. And so it isn't something, you can't just tuck this idea of brand down with the marketing people. It's not just a crayon and some coloring that needs to be done. This is something that should run through your product team, through your customer services, through your HR. Everything, in my view, should stick and ladder up to a brand strategy. That is how you break the trap. If you can align everybody around what makes you unique, what is the unique offering that you're going to make in your category, that's when you break the trap. So, let's talk about brand strategy for a second. This is all lots of slides and definitions, so I hope you don't mind. I hope it's helpful. A brand strategy, my definition of that, is a strategic plan to define the unique value that you're going to offer the market. In other words, we need to really narrow down on the meaning we want people to attach to us, to the point where it's like, we know we're going to offer this thing that no one else is offering. And we're going to stand by it. And we're going to orientate our decisions around it. We're going to hire people that believe what we believe. We're going to show up and communicate to people in the way that we know will attract the right audience's attention to us. We're going to innovate products and services and offerings so that we really do live this thing. And it's not just a veneer and a lick of paint and a couple of nice logos at the end. That it's something that we live and breathe, and we can then have metrics and demonstrate and reasons to believe, and everybody will love us and we will retire happy and proud of the work that we've done. That sounds great, doesn't it? Let's do that. Why don't we do that? We don't have brand strategy, because what we tend to do is we have a business strategy, which usually has a lot of commercial things attached to it. Maybe we've been bought, maybe we're owned by another company, whatever it might be. And we have these commercial goals, which we have to have because we've got to put food on the table, pay people's wages, pay the rent, etc. Nothing wrong there. And that might also contain some growth opportunities, some new markets we might want to go into, whatever. A lot of businesses have a business strategy. And then we go, oh, that's great. We push that down to marketing and we say, right, marketing, give us a marketing strategy of how we're going to make that happen. That's how most businesses operate. My view is that you miss a bit there. My view is that we need to insert a brand strategy before we get to the marketing team. And what we do with the brand strategy is that we create that strategic plan to really understand the unique value we're going to offer long-term in the market, so that, yes, the marketing team can generate leads in the short term, but we always have an eye on where we're going. Who is it that we're going to serve? Why do we exist beyond making money? How are we going to show up for them? What's our unique offer? That then drives longer term thinking in the business. And then this section here can also influence not just your marketing strategy, but your people strategy, your culture, your product strategy, your delivery strategy, and any other strategy you wish to mention. So that's where I'm going with this, okay? This is what I call brand leadership. This is where you have a leadership team who are all aligned and pointing towards that wonderful future that isn't about them getting rich and fat. It's about the value that they offer to the customer. And that is the way to success. And then the money comes after that. That's the result of delivering that value. So it should, if you do it right, if you get your brand strategy right, the reason for it is it helps you to simplify your decision making. From the top to the bottom of the organization, micro, macro decisions, you have a map by which to say, are we on brand with this? Does this fit with our long-term vision or not? And as I say, it should center in on unique value. Like, what can customers get from you that they cannot get anywhere else? So this is where we want to get to over here, a great brand. As I say, typical brands, we're the best. Yawn, because everybody else is saying that. What I want to know is we are the only X that does Y. So this is my challenge to all of you business owners out there right now in this room. If I was to challenge you, and I'm not going to because I don't want to embarrass anyone, but if I was to say, what is the unique value that you are offering the market? I'd like to think you'd have an answer. And if you don't, well, keep listening. So this is another way of saying this is a lovely little model. So you've got the category you're in, and then you've got your company here with its history and its resources and your team and all of that good stuff, your products and services. You've got what customers want over here and the market, what they need, and you've got also what your competitors are doing. Now, the aim of the game, most typical brand positioning puts sort of a positioning in here, and people are content with that. I'm not content with that. Where I want to go is over here, where we're offering something our competitors are not, but our company can deliver and our customers really, really want. So that's the aim of the game. Now, this is another way of thinking about it, and I'd just like to share this with you because I think the problem has come, if I'm honest. We are in the wonderful place of Newark, okay, which was at the heart of, this whole area, the East Midlands, the heart of the Industrial Revolution, all right? And I think some of that Industrial Revolution mindset is still within all of us, me too, right? In our culture, in our British culture. And the Industrial Revolution was amazing, right? But what happened was that the winners in the Industrial Revolution were the people that owned the means of production, because it was all to do with factories and machines. So if you had a factory, you could churn out stuff, and then you would run around trying to sell that stuff to everywhere else, to customers. It was a numbers game. Some people bought, some people didn't. Great. But that model, I'm going to suggest to you, is slowly dying. If not, it probably has died in your industry. What's the new model then? Matt, I hear you say. I'm so glad you asked. So here it is. We swap something round. So instead of starting with the product that our factory produces, we don't do that anymore. We start with the customer that we want to serve, the type of person, the type of company if we're in B2B. We start with them, and then we get to understand them, their problems, their issues, their challenges, and then we produce a product, or a product and a service, an offering, or a brand to solve the challenges and the needs of those customers. And do you see how that's a big difference? So if I was to say to you, who are your customers? And we heard this earlier, people say, anybody. It's like, no, you're thinking about this wrong. You've still got your industrial revolution mindset. You're selling to everybody and anybody that moves. That is not great, because you can't build a brand, you can't become known, you can't add the right meaning to those types of people. What you need to do is start with some people call it the tribe, right? The type of person that kind of is in that group, and then you offer them a brand and a solution. Now, I'm waffling on, but how am I doing for time, Katie? 10 left. All right, I'll just share this real quick. Once you know that, there's a great way of being able to articulate that with what I call the strategic narrative. I'll just mention this, talk to me afterwards if you're interested, but this is Mark Benioff. He was the founder of Salesforce, okay, the big CRM. And what was amazing about how he launched so successfully, he had a new product that he was entering a market with. But rather than just kind of, just saying, we just got a great CRM, customer relationship management system, he said, software is over. I was like, what? He says, software is over, winners embrace the cloud. And everyone's like, what's the cloud? Okay, because he was launching not only a new system, but also the way it was managed. And what he meant was software was over in the sense that software in those days, you remember you used to buy it in boxes. You used to install it on a server in your office in the corner, and there's all these lights flashing. He says that's over. You've got to embrace the cloud and software as a service where you pay a monthly fee. And now we're all on Spotify and we pay Apple and Netflix, and we're all happy with that now. But that was he started that revolution because he completely reframed the problem. So if you are looking to kind of shift the dial in your sector, and a great way of kind of doing it is thinking about, well, what's the truths that currently exist for my tribe, for my customer base in this area? What's the undeniable change or truth that exists there? And then what I'm going to do is, there was supposed to be a couple more things come on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say goodbye to the old world and hello to the new world. Goodbye to software, hello to the cloud. That's how you start to communicate it. Anyway, that's probably a bit more detail than necessary, but we'll move on. The point is that you're trying to tell a story and a narrative that breaks people out of the current category thinking. You're standing out, you're offering something unique, like Mark Benioff was with the cloud. It's unusual, it's different, and that's how you get noticed, and then you become less like everybody else. Am I quite near that? So stop following. Lead by being a leader. Stop copying. Design your point of valuable difference. Get the word out. Invest in that 95% as well as the 5%. Lean into it. Create real value and enable customers to promote it. That's what you need to do. So my question to you all as business leaders, what makes your brand unusual in your space? Like unusual in a good way. Don't just kind of just do silly stuff, right? It's got to be of value, like really unusual in a good way. That's what you've got to think through. And if you do that right, if you find the right audience that you're going to help in the right way, in a unique way, in a way that they can't be helped by any other brand or business, then you become the only choice. And that is the pinnacle. That's where you want to get to. Because then it's not even a question of if someone's going to buy or not. It's a question of, can I afford you? And that is where you want to get to. So this question then, I lay it on top of my 4 strategy questions. Where are we different? Where are we unique in a way that adds lots of value? You know, you could say, well, we're a hairdressers, Matt. we're not going to change being a hairdresser. Okay, so maybe you could be unique in how you're a hairdresser. Maybe you dance around your customers and play really interesting R&B. I don't know, just make a decision. But it has to be of value to the right type of customer. So you've got to think that through. So what are the benefits if you think this way strategically with your team? Well, they should be fairly obvious. If you get it right, you can in fact charge more for the same product. You can in fact attract more customers. You can cut costs from your marketing, recruitment and PR because word of mouth spreads, because those people who find massive value, they're going to tell other people who also want the same thing. You can differentiate from your competitors. You can align, inspire and empower your teams, and ultimately you can increase your company value. Now, you might say, Matt, that's all lovely. Let's have some case studies. Let's see this in action. So I thought I'll throw 3 quick case studies in that I'm going to just skip over real quick, but you'll see the point. In, I don't know, it was about 2015 or something. This is what the water category, bottled water category looked like, all right? There's some differences in there, but pretty much everything felt and looked the same. And then, if you've been to the US recently, you'll know that this brand is a phenomenon. Anybody is drinking now water, not from bottles, plastic, which of course is ruining our planet, but now are drinking from these cans. And they look really strange, don't they? This is a water brand, okay? It looks like one of those Monster Energy kind of drinks, doesn't it? Or some sort of rock concert thing. But this is Liquid Death, and it's just water in a can. You think, why have they called it Liquid Death? Why does it look like this? Why is it in a can? Well, these are different, right? And it adds value, because if you are a conscious person and you want to look after the planet, of course this stands out to you. You think, oh, do you know? And then, hey, if I buy it, I look really cool. So Liquid Death, and it's absolutely bonkers what they do. Absolutely bonkers. This was an A/B test where they gave people electric shocks live, over the internet if they guessed another competitor's water wrong. Come on in, ladies, have a seat. And she's looking shy. Great to have you on the front row. I was getting a bit nervous. I was, talking to the chair. So Liquid Death, very unusual, bizarre, adding value in their sector. Does it work from a business perspective? Well, obviously there's lots of factors, but the brand is very much part of the decisions they're making. Look at the money that is being raised in such a short space of time. That was the last valuation a couple of years ago, 1.4 billion. I imagine it's a lot more now. Of course, they get penetration into supermarkets. It's like really exciting, really interesting. And so I would suggest to you the brand thinking, the value, that is what's driven the success. And in fact, if you don't believe me, this is Forbes magazine. It says here, and that's the trick, it's not what's in the tall boy cans that has driven Liquid Death's success, it's everything around it. The company's billion-dollar valuation underscores the importance of brand and its dominating effects on consumer behavior. So that's my first witness to this ideology. And if you were interested, a little shameless plug, I do a podcast, just a little podcast. We're in our 6th or 7th season now, and we had Stephen Nilsson, who is, his job title, check this out, is Vice President of Cult Indoctrination at Liquid Death on. So come and listen to that if you're interested in how they did it. So this one will be a real quick one. Case study number 2, right? These are typical cars. I'm getting excited. Sorry, it's me. I'm dancing around. I better stay back. These were typical cars in, I'd say, I think like even up to 2019, okay? The most popular car color that was sold was, in fact, grey. Okay, we all sort of wrinkle our noses, but I bet you've owned a grey car in the past. I have. So, that's fine. They were the ones that were being manufactured and everybody bought grey cars. But then in 2023, a company decided, no, we are going to differentiate ourselves and connect it to value, okay? We are going to say no more grey cars, ever. That company was Fiat. And what they decided was we're going to be Italian. Like, we're Italian. We have colourful culture. And why are we making these dull grey cars? So they connected it to a bigger subset of value, differentiated, and they started to, they did this massive campaign where they dipped a car in orange and said, no more. And they rebranded, they looked at their culture, and they really kind of amplified this fact that we are Italian, we're going to spread Italianness around the world, and they made sure that there was no more grey. Now, there's lots of factors involved again, but they are a very interesting success story because their parent company, Stellantis, actually all of their sales were dipped in 2024, I think it was, except for one brand in their whole portfolio, which, shock horror, guess what it was? Fiat. Now, that's super interesting, isn't it? So I would suggest that the brand was the reason for that. I'm getting told my time is going because I'm waffling on. Last case study. Case study number 3. You might say, Matt, that's lovely. These are all consumer brands. I work in B2B. I'm in a service-based business. Give me some examples. And I'm also local in the East Midlands. Have you got any examples from the East Midlands? And yes, I have. Has anybody seen Cooper Parry? Anyone here from Cooper Parry? Okay, thank goodness for that. Right. So, because I might get the story wrong, so I can tell you it now. But Cooper Parry, obviously over 100 odd years ago, were a typical accountants from Derbyshire. This is what, I think their office building's in there somewhere, typical wood panellings and stuff. And then they had these new partners come in, early 2000s, who kind of started to think differently. Just because we're in the accountancy profession doesn't mean we have to show up in our wood panelling with our suits and ties on looking like everybody else. They realized that, hey, we don't dress like this normally outside of work. Why are we dressing like this inside of work? Why are we talking this certain way? And they noticed that entrepreneurs were coming through the door who weren't really interested in that kind of stuffy way of doing business. And they had an idea. Abe Cheltenham, the CEO, had this idea with his partners at that time. Look, hey, we're going to revolutionize this. We're going to create a different type of accountancy culture. We're going to wow clients in a way that they've never been wowed before, and that's going to drive our business success. And they were right. Because they rebranded, they were called the Rebels of Accountancy. They did everything differently, but adding value every step of the way for the type of audience they wanted, the maverick entrepreneur. And so they positioned themselves by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs. They wanted to disrupt and lead. They spent loads of money on their offices. This was in Birmingham. I think they had a running track around the office. It looks a little bit more like Google than it does an accountancy firm. You think, why would they do that? And then you realize, well, if I'm a maverick entrepreneur, okay, this is the sort of people I want to be doing my accounts, giving me advice. And so that's what they did. And did it work? Yes, it did. They are, this was just from earlier this month. They passed 250 million turnover with their latest acquisition. And shameless plug, if you want to know, go and see that podcast there. So final thing, I'll just leave this with you, and I am wrapping, Katie, so don't stress. So you might be sat there thinking, well, that's lovely, Matt. Give me some practical stuff that I can go away and do with my team. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do in my last minute. As I say, we're trying to get here. Things that customers want, our company can offer, but our competitors are not offering. So you've got to look at all 3 of those groups. You've got to step back and be real, do some analysis. And then you've got to list your brand's key attributes and offerings. Compare those against your main competitors. Identify the areas where your brand overlaps with competitors and where it diverges, and then highlight those unique aspects. Seems simple, doesn't it? Have a look at your customer journey. I'm not going to spend time on this, but look through it. Look where you can add value and help people do things with you that they haven't done with your competitors, and they can experience things differently. And I do want to share this one with you. This is a really beautiful one. List out your competitors, analyze their value props, distill what makes your brand different and why customers should choose you, and then write your ownerliness statement. What's an ownerliness statement? It's the pinnacle of positioning statements. Our brand is the only blank that blanks. Can you do that for your business? If you can't, that's okay. You've got to do some work. There's some examples on there. I haven't got time to go through those. Now, you might do that and think, flip, Matt, I've done my best. I've done all the analysis. I'm not that different. Our business isn't that different. That's okay, because I've got an exercise for that as well. I call it the assumption flip. This is a fun one, right? So get your team together and brainstorm all the things which are typical and expected in your industry at all steps of the customer journey. Then flip them. What if we did the complete opposite? So let's say, it's typical that we charge a low price. Okay, well, let's flip that. What if we charge the maximum price? What does that start doing? And as you go down the list, you'll find some things will be useful and add value, some things won't. But that's where you'll spark ideas and different thinking. So, my parting message is branding. Manage your meaning. Break the trap. Thank you, everybody, so much for your time. Appreciate you clapping. Thank you. Before I go, one thing. I've got a free ebook, if you're interested, which I can share with you afterwards. It's up on the screen. There's a QR code there on Dare to be Different. It goes through everything I talked about and gives you those exercises in workbooks. So I'll just let you take a photo of that quick. Oh, I'm in the way, sorry. Nearly died then.
Please don't die.
Fell off the stage.
I don't want to have to be the person that has to follow the dead act.
His last words were, watch your step. Yeah, and then also finally, if you're a business leader, I consult. I do leadership offsites. I do a lot of public speaking. If you're in marketing or you are a brand builder, I have a mastermind that meets every month. I have a new course that's just coming out, how to become a brand consultant in February, and I do one-to-one coaching. So again, all of those are up for you if you're interested. So final thing, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Cheers, everyone.
Please give up for Matt Davies, everybody.